welcome to the Daft Souls podcast, brought to you by CoolGhost.net. I'm Matt Lees, and I'm joined today by one hell of a soldier. It's Mr. Christopher Bratt.
Hello, is that how you do the intros now? That's very
I'm trying to get into the hang of doing it differently, because I forget that I've got a website.
You've got a website, a very pink website.
Not just a
talked about before.
Yeah, so I like to remind people, just in case people stumble onto this podcast and go, "Oh, damn, this is a good podcast."
If only we had a pink website.
We do a pink website that has like videos on it, which are basically the same as this, but you get to see my face and gesticulation. And talking of videos, I'm currently waiting for YouTube to do the business with a very large video I've made about XCOM 2.
Oh, man.
Which is what we're going to talk about today. So I brought today the world's best soldier, Chris Bratt.
I think I've uploaded an hour and 10 minutes of XCOM 2 so far over the last few months.
It's just the beginning, though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but there's such big videos. You just can't help it with this game.
No,
you absolutely cannot help it.
For those of you who don't know, me and Bratt used to work at Video Game, and one of the things that commonly joined us together was our absolute unabashed love of XCOM. And so Chris has kindly come all the way over here from Brighton and Eurogamer. I've forced a coffee and a whiskey down his throat, and now we're going to talk about XCOM 2. We're going to talk about XCOM 2 for the whole episode, pretty much. So, I've been playing some other stuff, and we'll talk about some other stuff. But frankly, fuck it. Like, we had an entire episode where we talked about XCOM 2 just when it came out, and now we've both played it. I've played it for about 20 hours.
Yeah, you got ahead of me. I did some bad things with some CD keys or whatever they're called, and I played about 5 hours and got locked out of it because I'm an idiot and activated it on the wrong computer.
5 hours is probably still more than most people.
Yes.
So I think that's fine. But what a game.
I don't think I can't remember having this level of expectation for a video game and it not being disappointed.
I purposefully kind of went into it not knowing anything about it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I didn't try that. I tried to go in not like being, if it's bad, then it's fine. At least we got a couple of good games. I really needed it to be decent.
I got code for it just before Christmas, but then I had to go home. And I thought, actually, in a way, that allowed my excitement to sort of subside. And I was sort of like, oh, okay, fine. And then when I came back after Christmas, I kind of went into it being like, well, look, I'm going on holiday for a week, get a bit of sun for New Year. Tomorrow, I thought, look, if I do a really fast pack, if I just pack all my clothes really, really quickly, I thought maybe I can have a little go on XCOM, right? Just see what it's like, get a bit of flavour.
Maybe do the first couple missions.
Precisely.
I think. Yeah.
I played it for 15 hours that day.
Boom.
And I still somehow managed to pack and go. But I couldn't believe how engaging I found it. Now, for those of you who don't know, like XCOM 2 makes a bunch of changes. You're kind of like a more guerrilla outfit trying to fight against the man.
Yep.
It's got a kind of slightly syndicate-y vibe in terms of it being like the world is now run by this sort of alien-human alliance called the bloody Advent.
The Advent, yeah. So like in XCOM Enemy Unknown, you started with the full support of the Council, which were like the representatives of each nation, and you had all of them on board. And then slowly as you went through it, that number started to drop, and you needed to hold on to as many of them as possible so you can complete the game. This time it seems like it's like the opposite of that. So you start with pretty much nothing and try to build up this kind of resistance against Advent.
It's a full reversal, and also it's great because the biggest problem I think with the original XCOM was the fact that you had these two halves of the game. You had the tactical game, the combat, that was great. And then you had the strategic game, the kind of the world, the base, and all that stuff. And really, the strategic game was a lot lighter and a lot more easy to manipulate. I
didn't realise that I had issues with the strategic part of the game until I played XCOM 2. Like thinking back now, satellites are rubbish. Like what? I never realised that until I started playing this. I don't like satellites, I don't think.
Well, I hope people get it. There's a bit in my video where I just go, now to talk about the elephant in the room, and I just say satellite. I'm hoping that people will actually know what I'm on about.
Oh, come on, yeah. The people that are currently like watching every single like XCOM YouTube video they can find, they know this.
Yeah, sure.
People listening to a podcast that's already said this is only going to be about XCOM 2 probably know that.
No, you're right. I'll try not to cross over as many topics as well, but for those of you interested, the video I do, it doesn't have any specific spoilers about enemies or items or anything like that. We may have a little bit of that in this today, just talk about some of the stuff we've experienced in the game, but that video is purely just looking at in kind of broad design strokes and looking at tiny decisions and how they kind of affect the whole game. So it's pretty much completely spoiler free if you care about those things.
Sure. Another thing I was going to just whilst we're on the topic of like realizing I didn't really like satellites, another thing that I sort of realized is I found it really refreshing that there isn't, or at least I don't know it yet, there isn't a clear build order. Like in Enemy Unknown, there's one thing that can kind of scupper how successful your build order is, and that's, you remember when you start the base and the kind of where the steam vents are located in like the framework that you're going to build your base in, that can change like the optimum way of building it if you're really into it.
It does. It's like kind of you realize, you think, okay, well, you have to kind of plan ahead in terms of how you build your stuff.
Apart from that, like there was a clear best way to build, or like you tend to do it in a very similar way every game.
Yeah.
Whereas this time they've changed that through a few methods. One of which is like there's an added focus on like randomization.
Yes,
I found, and like I get the impression that campaigns are going to feel even like different. Like,
well, I've actually experimented with this quite a bit.
You've done a second playthrough, like, a little bit, right?
Because I played it for about 15 hours, and I came back and carried on my campaign, which I was very much in love with, and a little message popped up saying, "Thank you for playing the preview of XCOM 2," at which point I went, "No!" And I wandered around my flat feeling quite sad and bereft for a little while because I didn't know what to do with myself, and then I pulled myself together and said, "Matt, maybe you should fucking make a video about it or something, do some bloody work." But anyway, I went back again because I had suspicions about this kind of randomization. I wanted to see how effectively it would mix things up for playing a new campaign, and it does. Obviously, you've got the traditional kind of tutorial period, but after that, it's much more interesting. And actually, what's interesting about it is you look in the first game, and like you said, you've got this base building puzzle, which basically there is a clear path of how
a puzzle's a good way to describe it, actually. If like from the moment you see that framework at the start, you can draw in your mind like the perfect base. Like, oh, the steam vents are here, then we'll put like, one of those power units here, and then everything else can kind of fit around it.
Absolutely. And that was what it was in the first game. It was a simple puzzle, but it was a simple puzzle to master. And then as soon as you realize that really the secret to the game was satellites, because really XCOM was a weird endurance game where all you had to make sure you did was just keep putting out satellites and stopping any nation from getting upset. Then the money would never drop, and then once you had full satellite coverage of the world, you were just earning loads of money, and the whole game became quite easy. So it became this game of just rushing to make as many satellites as you could as quickly as you could. They tried to fix that in Enemy Within, the expansion, just by stabbing you constantly while you were trying to build satellites. They kind of just made it more difficult so that you couldn't afford to sneakily... There was like always in every campaign of XCOM, there was a tipping point, which was the point where you just invested really heavily in building the next batch of satellites. And at that point, because you were under-equipped, it was like a kind of gamble, and you might get completely screwed over. But if you could ride it out, then you made so much money that it was like plasma rifles for everyone.
A brilliant thing about this, actually, like this is a valid complaint, and I think, well, they've obviously realised this, that's why they've changed it. But this is a complaint that only pops up once you really understand the game. And that's multiple playthroughs. Like that, the first time you play Enemy Unknown,
it's just great.
That doesn't happen. And actually, that's one of the things that I really, really enjoyed playing this preview build, is that like, I don't have a fucking clue what's going on again.
Yeah.
And it's such a great feeling. Like, I know the basic rules, I know how XCOM works, but I don't know like what I should be researching. I don't know how enemies are going to work until I meet them. That's cool.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is like, and I kind of felt like at first that a lot of the stuff on the new kind of strategic layer was a bit obtuse. The fact you've got resources, which are basically money, but you've also got intel, which is like a different kind of money. So you've got two economies, and then you've got other stuff, and the base building thing is completely different now. It's just not the same at all. It's a much smaller amount of space. Building is slightly less important because you can get resources from kind of flying around the world and doing stuff. I'll go back to that in a minute. But it's almost like a board game. It's like a worker placement game of it being like, well, you've got 3 engineers. What do you want to do with them? You'd be like, well, this guy's going to dig a hole for a new room. This guy's going to stay in the power room to make more power. And then this guy's going to do this. And it starts to have that same kind of board game style mechanic of like, you build an engineering place, then you put an engineer in it. That engineer creates 2 little robots. And then those 2 robots can act as engineers in adjacent rooms. So already you've got this kind of it's clearly board game inspired, but it's like a really simple like board game puzzle. But what's nice is that in the first game, because it was just your base, that element of the game like had too much weight on it. It was too important and it was too easy. Whereas this, it's like you've got this fun little game of being like, all right, well, he's doing that for 20 days, he's doing that for 10 days, and after that, he's going to do this. But then you've also got this system of having events dynamically popping up within your radio range, which is basically like the new equivalent of satellites, but instead of it keeping
you have to
people
protect
happy,
them still, and like your influence grows as you build more of them.
But also, it's not just you get more money for getting more of them in the same way you did with satellites in a way. But rather than keeping people happy, it just means that when you've got one, you get money and you find out about events. And these events pop up, and it's nice in the fact that you don't know how long they're going to stay there for. They do disappear after a while, but it'll be like, oh, we've just found some new rookies, we found some intel, and you fly over there, time passes, and then you get that stuff for free. You don't have to do a mission. And that's kind of amazing sometimes, because it means I've actually had points on the world map where I've been punching the air because I just lost loads of rookies in a horrible mission or something. It's like, 2 days later, it's like, there's some rookies here. Should we go and get them? You're like, yes! Because it's like, I haven't got any supplies. I can't afford any rookies. Like,
This is something that I wanted to ask, because I've only played, less than you. I still find the G-Escape stuff, is that still what we call it? Like the world map?
I guess so.
I still find it like... I think about it day to day. I don't really have a plan of it. Like, so there is. I'm not sure if we can really talk about this, but there is the aliens are up to something, and you need to stop that.
Yeah, we can talk about. I mean, the thing is, it was great in the embargo notes. It's just like you can talk about it, but you can't talk about what it is. It's like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we haven't got that.
I didn't get that far. I don't, but
I know that there's a countdown going on, and I need to stop the aliens from doing this thing. And I get that, and I'm slowly working towards it, but. There's a lot to choose from. Like those events that you talk about, there's almost too many to keep up with.
And that's actually one of my few, I wouldn't say it's complaint, but it's one of the few things about the game that just feels like uncharacteristically messy. Because everything about everything about the tactical side of the original XCOM just felt so neat and carefully made and clever and simple. And actually, I think in XCOM 2, they have... added to that in a way. They've actually made other elements, things like armor, is now actually simplified as well in a way, and they've actually kind of added more elegant design. They have shifted away from it in some ways, your units now scale up in terms of how much health they have more quickly. But there's reasons for that we might come back to lately. It's mainly because you're fighting against more enemies and getting shot more often, so it's like you kind of need to. But there are elements that they've added, especially on the strategic side, which just feel weirdly messy compared to, especially when they've compressed down the way that the base building works. They've simplified that. They've actually made that really simple and elegant, and they've reduced the numbers on that. I mean, really, that's what elegance comes down to in my mind, is often just being like, why is this 100? Could it be 10?
Yeah.
And they're like, if the answer is yes, then it should be 10. And then we're like, can it be 1? If the answer is what? Yes, then make it 1.
Yeah.
And they've done that with scientists and engineers. So instead of having 20 scientists and 20 engineers, you have 3, and they've all got names.
Right. That's we're on a bigger point here, but I want to quickly go off and say, so you had council missions in Enemy Unknown, Enemy Within, where you would rescue a scientist, a named scientist, famous scientist, and it would be for the council. So you'd rescue him, and then you'd start off and go and do scientist stuff for them.
Something for the fucking council.
Now there isn't really a council. You're the only people that give a crap anymore. You get that, and you get an attachment to scientists and engineers.
Yeah.
Instead of having I get 50 new scientists every month.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's I love that, because it means that when you're doing a VIP mission, it's probably one of the first times in games where I've ever had an escort mission where I actually give a fuck.
Yeah, right.
It's this thing of you don't want this person to get shot. When the person gets shot, you're not just going, oh fuck, I fell. Back to the Sky Ranger. It's that was going to be the guy who was going to work in the power station, really useful. And then I could have made this facility, but now he's
So yeah, that is lovely, but I think that's a smaller point than the one we were just going to finish off there. I think what you're trying to say, the G-Escape, the world map stuff, because of these random events that happen, I know what you mean. I found it to feel a bit messy, but I don't know whether or not that's just because I don't know what the full picture looks like yet. I don't know exactly what I'm going to want at the end of the game. I don't know what I'm building towards.
I think it's more that the new stuff they've added on the tactical layer, especially things like the way that armor works and the way that hacking works, explained with basic tutorials, and then you just learn through doing. And actually, it's all quite obvious, and it's also quite nicely visually signposted. You just press the buttons the first time, you don't know what's happening, but then you look at what happens and you go, oh, I get it now. I get it. Whereas some of the stuff on the kind of strategic layer, is not as clear. And actually, the first kind of campaign I played through, I did a lot of stuff quite wrong. And not majorly, I was still having a good time, and I'm sure I did loads of stuff wrong on my first playthrough of XCOM, of course.
Sure.
But I didn't really know what was going on with a lot of stuff. And actually, especially when it started popping up on the world map with like, oh, there's all these 4 different things. Like you can go here for intel, you can go here for resources, you can go here for rookies, you can go here for this. I didn't really know what was going on.
When you get supplies, like you get your income during the month, it's dropped on the map somewhere. You have to go and pick that up and spend days doing that. And it just feels like there's a lot going on. And I'm wary of saying it's a complaint yet, because I don't know. Like I imagine the first time I played Enemy Unknown and I looked at the satellites, and to be fair, they did turn out, maybe they weren't the game's best feature. I imagine I thought the strategic about the game is fucking crazy, man. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And eventually you kind of learn.
I think it's just when it gets to that point where like there's like about 5 different things you can do, and you just don't really. What's lucky though actually is at first I found it a bit overwhelming and a bit obtuse, but actually after starting another game, actually I kind of, for whatever reason, I just clocked a lot of stuff. I knew what the things were. I knew what I could do with intel.
I think that will.
And I enjoyed it a lot more. And I enjoyed things of being like, oh, it's a supply drop, and having to go and get it, and collecting intel and spending it at the black market on like cool upgrades or speedier research. And
I just it doesn't seem to have the same kind of it doesn't ease you in the same way that the tactical game, the new changes in the tactical stuff do.
And I think it is lacking in polish and finesse. I think it could have been simpler and cleaner. But it's okay, because I think that one of the difficulties of it is they wanted to, I'm assuming that what they wanted to do was to add the same level of complexity and intrigue to the strategic layer as you find in the tactical layer. And the way they've done that, they haven't managed to do it in quite a clean and neat way, but it does work. And I think that's the thing that's amazing about it, is I do actually get excited and compelled about flying around the world and picking up stuff, especially because you start to have these interesting elements that get added. I mean, one of the things I really like about the new strategic kind of part of the game is something I wonder if they've actually borrowed the idea from the XCOM board game, because there was a similar thing in that where you had to draw a bunch of cards called crisis cards. And then you had,
I was thinking that when you said they've learned from board games, well, they've been working on them too.
I really think that, it was another designer who works on the XCOM board game, but they would have been looking at it and they would have been feeding back and all that stuff. And I wonder if they just looked at that and went, that's a cool idea. Can we put that in the game? Because basically the game, in the board game, you have this thing where you get all these crisis cards and it's like, oh, here's 6 bad things that are going to happen. You can only get rid of 4 of them.
I love that. And so that turns up once a month, right?
It's called Dark Events. And it's lovely because what it means is like you have like 2, maybe 3 things that the aliens are working on, and you have a timeline for them. It's like, this is going to happen in 4 weeks. This is going to happen in 3 weeks. Sometimes you have 2, sometimes you have 3, and the third one is like blocked off, and you have to spend intel to find out even what it is. It's like an unknown thing. And what's lovely is then, about a week later in game, it will ask you'll get a choice of 3 missions. And it used to do this in the last game of being like, oh shit, like you got an alien that's hacking Berlin, Spain, Australia. And the thing with that was it was always like, oh, you always had to go to the place that was already the least happy. Like the Australians were fucked off with the XCOM project. You went to fucking Australia. Fuck them, but got it. Whereas in this, it's like you genuinely have to weigh up like what the risks are. It's like, one thing will be like, oh, the intel costs will be double for a month, or like, oh, there'll be another basically another terror mission quicker. Or something, and you have to be like,
there's a bunch. So I imagine we haven't seen all of them. I think I was reading maybe the PC Games End preview, and they were talking about the dark events, and that they had a choice at one point, which was between something that sounded really bad and one that said, right, from every mission this month, you're going to get 2 rounds of reinforcements, which does sound bad, but in your mind, because I'd be the same. I think I'd be like, I can handle that. Because, sod it, I'd be able to do that. Reinforcements.
A lot of men.
And then that month, they end up losing a valued soldier to the second round of reinforcements. And then suddenly, the reason that you lost that soldier probably comes back to that click of the button, that decision.
Absolutely.
And I think that is actually one of my favourite changes to the.
And the other thing I've realised is that what's nice is that on this map, basically, time passes not that hugely when you're moving around the world because you've got this giant ship and it
I wish it told you how much that was. Like, it's usually like less than a day, right?
yeah, there's that, and there's another tiny thing which really actually aggravates me a little bit is that after you've done anything, it asks you if you want to return to base, and you're like, no, usually you don't want to return to base.
Yeah.
Usually you want to go somewhere else, and the fact that like you always have to go, no, I just wish if it was like, just don't.
Do you know what's great though? This game's got mod support, so that stuff will get fixed on day one.
The mod support is like so embedded that I think that's all these tiny niggles, which would basically be nothing, like UI changes, fixed. And, you know, like there's a lot of bugs as well. And I really wonder, one of the things I wonder is how the community will go to town on the bugs. I mean, it's something I didn't mention in the video because I find it quite tedious, but yes, like the XCOM 2 has the same problem as XCOM of like occasionally the animations just being a bit off or glitching out slightly.
I don't really mind that.
I never really cared.
Yeah, I've always, I don't know, I think I always quite like it. It's just a weird XCOM thing, and it never really bothers me. But
I just do not care about it.
I have seen the one where, like, when an important thing happens in the tactical and it slows down
too long. Yeah.
For some reason, I really hope that one gets fixed because it will focus on the character in slow motion. It's probably not even doing anything cool.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck with that. But yeah,
I'm sure it will. I mean, these are things where like they're not game breaking bugs. They're kind of like a bit annoying. Occasionally it does that. The one that I've noticed is when it like slows down because it's like, oh, you're not supposed to be slowing down, are you?
Yeah.
And not in terms of your PC slowing down, as if it like doing that cinematic camera, and it's like, you're not supposed to be doing that, are you?
And it's like,
but honestly, like these all have been minor things that none of them have even managed to dent my enthusiasm for the game. So even if it launches like that, I just say like, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Like it's still awesome.
I would like, if anyone watched the preview that I did a couple of months ago now, there was one bug that would have been a real issue, which was when you couldn't cycle between layers on buildings, and you had to make a movement, and then it would be okay. I didn't run into that. Did you? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen that, but I have found that sometimes when I'm scrolling between the layers of the buildings, like sometimes it doesn't show you them very precisely.
Okay.
Like you have to move to kind of see it. But I haven't. Again, I've found that I've been like, oh, that's something that needs to be sorted out. But it hasn't really been a major issue.
Yeah, it's definitely happening a lot more when I played it a couple months ago. So that I think they've definitely worked.
There's
on
bits and bobs that needs a bit of polish, but yeah. I mean, also the thing that I found interesting was that like there are some things which I already, as this traditional gamer, found myself like finding workarounds for all sorts of things that I don't quite like. Like realizing that I don't like watching the animations for like some of the bits, and realizing that actually
you can just tab to the next character and it often breaks it.
You can tab to the next character or just use the mouse like up and down thing to just tab out and just be like, just skip the animation. Yeah. And when you get the new reinforcements flying in the ship, and you have to watch the ship animation, I just realized you press the escape to go to the option menu and then press escape and then it cancels the cutscene, which is like. But again, it's like these are the minor irritations that come from somebody who has played this for 15 hours in one day and being like, come on, I need to do more. Yeah. I need to do more.
Oh man. Shall we switch over to the tactical stuff? We haven't really talked about that so much yet.
We can come back to strategic in a bit.
So the thing that really stands out between this and its predecessor for me is that the game just has a sense of urgency, which I don't think Enemy Unknown had. Enemy Within tried to do a little bit. It tried to hack it with the whole meld idea, but they were working on someone else's system and they were trying to fix it. XCOM 2 has come like from scratch. It's thought like, how do we make sure that players aren't moving and overwatching every turn?
Yeah.
And like there were like four ways.
Overwatch is a real choice now.
Yeah,
it's a real choice. And actually, when I started playing, I was just doing my usual thing of just putting people on Overwatch all the time because it's the best thing to do. It isn't anymore. It's often a really bad thing to do. Like,
it looks cooler. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it does look cool.
And actually, something I do like about Overwatch, once again, these sound like small points, but when you played a lot of it, it's amazing. I love that Overwatch cycles. So in Enemy Unknown, when Overwatch triggered, everyone would shoot at the same time. And so say it's a sectoid with free health.
Fucking yes.
Like 4 people take out a sectoid and you're like, no, come on, shit.
Come on, guys, this is basic.
And now they do that. Now they cycle. So someone takes a shot.
Number 2.
And it does a cool slow motion camera that sometimes works. And it looks fucking ace. Like
when it like swings around to the next person taking a shot. Yeah. It's like that's the thing is this is what I mean. Sometimes the camera doesn't actually like it's trying to show something really cool and it gets stuck in a wall and it's like it doesn't look as cool as it's supposed to. But because of the ambition of what it's trying to do,
okay, I was going to say
that. I don't care.
I was like, at least it tried because I appreciate the effort. It's like you think something cool's going on, and I'm glad you've tried to make it look
because
cool.
I know it's one of these. I know from just understanding games that it was either either that or making a system whereby it goes camera 1 and then just cuts to camera 2.
Yeah.
And the fact that it tries to swing around behind each person one after other as they all shoot. Because, yes, occasionally it swings around behind the last person who kills it and there's a bit of a wall in the way so you don't see the enemy die. But when it gets it right,
Oh man,
it's
amazing.
so fucking good.
Mate, games are cinematic.
Oh man, but no, that's actually, that feature is something which I was really close to putting in the video, but I was like, dude, this video is like ballooning out of control, and this is a point.
I can't help myself. We were on a bigger point then, and I'm like, but let's quickly just mention this.
And that is the key to XCOM. That is why XCOM 2 is a joy to play. It's a game which has been designed from the ground up by the process of looking at XCOM and looking at what makes it work and looking at what can be refined, but then looking at what doesn't work and just fixing it in such a beautiful way. And that's why I get excited. The other bit that I kept in the video was the bit about armor, because that excites me so much, because what they've managed to do, right, is rather than armor just giving you more health, right, there's nothing satisfying about a guy who's got 4 more health getting shot and not dying.
Yep.
You just go, well, of course he didn't, he's got 4 more health. But by giving you this little yellow token next to the character's health, that every time you get shot removes 1 damage, and by every time you get shot pops up saying, oh, I got hit this much, but this much went to the armor. It means that, like, you are constantly being rewarded for having armor.
Visually
and it means that when you get shot, sometimes that feels good.
Yeah.
Because it actually makes getting shot feel fun. And I'm just like, that's fucking genius, because most game designers would just never even think of that. The kind of conversations are always like, how can we make it feel good that when you shoot an alien it feels good?
Yeah.
Like, the fact that somebody, I hope this is why it's happened anyway, the fact that somebody has had a conversation of going, is there a way we can make it feel good when you get shot?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, I'd like this. I'm just like, I fucking love this game.
The changes they made, I'm sure that conversation happened. So the complaint that I love that they've addressed, that whole like move Overwatch thing, the reason you often had to do that in XCOM Enemy Unknown is that the way that you encountered enemies, it kind of meant that was the best way to do it, because as soon as you see a group of enemies, they call them pods, they then react and run into cover. So if you've moved and overwatched and then the enemy's triggered because they patrol into you or something,
they all run
then
around.
You get to take shots at them whilst they're into cover, and so that became the best way to do it. And it's not that fun. Whereas, so there are 4 ways it stops you from doing that, I think. First of all is the concealment when you enter a mission. Most missions have concealment, and it means that all your characters are undetected at the moment and you get to set up a big ambush.
Yeah, it means you're not actually looking to protect yourself from gunfire. All you need to do is protect yourself from line of sight.
Yep.
So half cover is fine.
Yeah.
Because all you need to do is just like cower behind a bin.
And like when you pull off a successful ambush and you wipe out a group of aliens that you've just discovered, it is satisfying as hell.
Yeah.
Because you will position people, you'll put a sniper on a roof like before you even encounter people, and then you've got everyone in the best positions. That's amazing. There's the whole fact that like sometimes when enemies die, they will drop loot that has a timer on it. That's the kind of mild idea that was enemy within. But it means, oh shit, I need to like be a little bit ambitious here and move forwards if I want to get that. Then you've got the fact that like the game seems to have so many objectives that I'm not used to. Like you do occasionally have missions where it's like kill everyone.
It's rare though.
But even those usually have a stipulation. It's like kill everyone and get to this before it freaking blows up or something.
Yeah. And actually that's what I find is really interesting about XCOM 2 is the fact that this new mechanic of combining this concealment of this like stealth with missions whereby you've got to get in and get out within a certain amount of time. Often it's like get the hostage, get out here, and it's not just like get out here. It's like get out here
and get to
your car's here in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's this thing of it means that sometimes on missions I started to realize I'm like, hang on a minute, on missions where you don't actually kill everything and that's not the aim. You don't take the corpses home either because you're going.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go, well, what's the point in killing all the enemies then? And you go, well, there isn't really any point. And so you realise that like you actually want to try and spend most of the mission remaining concealed, bust out the hostage at the last minute, kill a couple of aliens, and leg it.
Yep.
And like the fact that you have missions like that where you end up having a mission where you kill 2 aliens and no one gets hurt, no one gets scratched, and that's really satisfying.
Yeah, that's never been a thing before. That's never been able to. And the hostage one's one that I found really, really exciting because of that. Like the timer for the hostage, like usually I was thinking, right, I need to get to the hostage within this time. And no, it's like you need to get to the hostage, get them out of this like locked room that they're in, and then get them to the like the drop zone or whatever where you're going to escape within that time. And I literally got my entire team out by dashing everyone on the last turn, and just managed to get just creep into the little area which I needed to be in. It was so
I've flaked out a lot on. I mean, I haven't been playing this on Iron Man. I've been playing it on a slightly tougher difficulty just to get a feel for it. But I've been safe scumming a lot. I've been when people have been dying, I've been reloading just because I wanted to see as much of the game as possible, and so I couldn't afford massive back sets. But I can't imagine setbacks. I can't imagine playing it on Iron Man because
I think I can.
I can, but it's because there's so many. It'd be great fun because there's so many randomized elements of it now, randomized loot, randomized other stuff we'll get to later. But the fact that the thing I can't get my head around is I'm, as an XCOM veteran, this new timer thing is huge. And I've had a few missions where I've been I've had to reload a really early mission because I've just if you get caught up in a fight, the problem is you might win that fight.
Yeah, and you have a little moment where you're fucking A, I just got everyone there without losing any health. And
there's no way that half the team can make it to evacuation point in time. And then they're dead. They're left behind. That's it.
Which changes how you play the game completely.
Changes the game massively.
Because you need to use things so concealment, for example. When you first start playing, you're right, I want to use concealment to get a successful ambush and wipe out 2-3 aliens without any losses. That's how we fucking start missions now. All right. But as soon as the time is introduced, in certain missions, you may start to think I should try and not do that for a while and use concealment to get close to the objective, then start my ambush, and then try and figure this out.
And then the fact that you've got the kind of assault style soldier with the kind of sword and shotgun, who can basically just charge and slash stuff with the sword. The fact that they get an optional ability, and upgrade is the ability for them to re-enter concealment, and also
I didn't dare go for it. It's one of those really interesting abilities that I was that sounds interesting, but the other one's
it's great because it means they can stay
more sword damage or something boring, and I'm I'm going to use that.
It means you can have it so an assault stays in concealment even when the rest of the squad isn't. So it means you have your ambush, but then you've still got this assault going off and going for the objective without any of the aliens knowing they're there.
Oh shit! And you can. I just thought you can draw everyone else to your main group, and the assault can go and
you still see all of the because you see on the UI the bits where you can't go because you'll get seen.
Yeah.
So you can just move around that and be careful and stealthy.
Holy shit!
And it means then
rescue the hostage.
Can wait, or you can just wait until the point where they're right next to an enemy and the enemy has no idea they're there, and they just pop up with a shotgun, kill them, and then they activate their ability to go back into concealment, which means that then they're just
so they drop
a ghost.
Oh man!
I actually had this wonderful thing. And one of the things I really love about XCOM 2 is the fact they've added this new human angle. I touched on it earlier, the fact that now your scientists and your engineers have names and you go attached to them in a way.
Did you notice that on the terror missions, which work in the same way, and you're trying to save civilians?
Well, the humans have names.
The civilians have names. What the fuck?
Yeah,
it changes it. It shouldn't, but it changes it.
And that's the thing, is there's more of an emphasis on the human characters. And I also love the fact that even your soldiers, more customization and more randomization means you actually get delivered soldiers who look more like humans than they do Playmobil characters. And you grow attached to them. And some of them I just give them a different. I just change one thing, and I'm giving you a hat, or I'm giving you a cigar, or I'm giving you some sunglasses, and they just go, yeah.
Did you know you start getting wanted posters appear on maps with your soldiers on them?
A tiny detail, but it's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
Did you know that when soldiers get massively injured, they actually just get scars, and you can remove the scars in the character customization?
Oh god, that's brilliant. So it's
I had this incredible French lady who's a heavy soldier, and she's just absolutely amazing and always just says things in French because yes, you can choose to have all of the nationalities speak in their nationality.
Crazy.
And she just turns up with a minigun and a rocket launcher and grenades, says something in French that I don't understand.
Could be anything.
Fucks them up. But she's been involved in so many serious scrapes with rockets and grenades that she's just gone from being this fresh-faced beauty to being this pockmarked, scarred. Man. And it's I said this in the video, it's I didn't engineer it, but for whatever reason, my main squad in my first save ended up being mostly comprised of alternate reality versions of Sarah Connor, a French one, a Swedish skinhead, and I'm just had all these amazing badass women. I didn't want to change their names, I didn't want to change any of their customization. It's just these were the soldiers.
But they change because of what happens. That's
cool. But I love that the one of mine in Assault, this woman with a hood, who was my kind of concealment expert, she would just always be For most missions,
I really regret not going down that route now. I think I'm going to have to try it.
For most
Sounds
missions,
so
she
cool.
wouldn't even come out of concealment. For most missions, she'd just be like waiting for the right moment or going to the objective, and there'd never be the right moment. But it meant that she'd get kills occasionally, and she'd leveled up and she survived, but it meant she'd never really been hurt. And it meant the rest of the squad were all covered in scars. And she still had this kind of baby-faced demeanour.
That's cool.
But even, and this is what I love, is the fact they've not just made it aesthetic, that whole thing about characters getting shaken. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like, if a character almost gets killed, their will is reduced.
Yeah.
And it means they're kind of like, they've got, like, trauma. But if you can then take them into a mission, get them to get a kill or two, and then not get hurt at all, then not only does their will go back to what it was before, their will is increased.
Yeah, I love that.
So I love that the fact that this baby-faced soldier who's been out there, she's great, and it's great she's never been hurt.
That's a story, though, isn't it? Like
but she's not tough.
But it's also, that is an actual story. Like, the character has gone through, that is a character arc. Like,
yeah.
She had a low point and then managed to come back from it and learn from the low point. And
that's why I'm actually kind of gutted that the ability to change scars and give characters scars is in the game.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I wonder if it should have been
I think it should have been mandatory, because I love the fact that it's like you get these characters covered in scars and you know that they're bad.
Well, you can just not do it.
Well, no, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I love that some of them are like fresh-faced, and I'm like, yeah, you're a hero. Yeah, you think you're all that. But I'm just like, one day when the real aliens come for you, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Like, when things heat up, you're going to lose your shit. Even if you're a captain or whatever, somebody more senior than you is going to die in the field. And I'm just waiting for it. But that's lovely, is they've actually made it feel like, if it does actually make as much of an impact as it suggests, they made it feel like something like willpower is a tangible thing that you can almost see in the faces of the soldiers, which I really love. I love it. It's like, yeah, you're good, but can you hack it?
That's awesome. I mentioned 3 of the things that the game's trying to make you move a little bit more. You take a few more risks. So there's the concealment, like from the beginning, you have the confidence to move because you know where the line of sight is and everything.
You can't hang back with snipers either anymore. Like, you used to be able to hang back with snipers.
And you don't need to. They've reworked the snipers so the pistols are actually
awesome,
and they look ace.
They're so cool.
There's the item drops that are really, really good a lot of the time, like the weapon upgrades and important items that you can use back at your base. Like, those are pickups that you'll need to like pick up before they explode. There's the variation in objectives. Not always, but a lot of the time you're encouraged to like complete a mission before things go bad. And then there's also reinforcements as well, which we mentioned before. Like, so that's 4 reasons why you can't just move Overwatch every single turn. Like, you one of those things will come back to bite you if you try. And
there's more than that as well.
It's great.
There's the fact that, like, I mean, yeah, you've got to keep moving because you can't afford to just stay in one place, because you've got to start moving towards.
There's so many things going on now.
So you have to move and then shoot, maybe. And when you have a sniper hanging back on that building at the start just because they've got a great vantage point, that starts to become a real choice. You're like, well, he can't stay here for much longer.
He's got to get over there. Picked up eventually. Yeah.
So you have to say, like, well, what? Maybe one more shot.
Whereas, like, a sniper in the old game, if you went for squad sight,
get them at the back of the.
You put them in a high point, maybe back corner, and like as long as they have what the game defines line of sight, you can leave them there the entire game, and that's it. Whereas now, a lot of the missions are like, no, the sniper's gonna have to keep moving, and I love it. These are people that have understood. Like, the XCOM Enemy Unknown was a very, very popular game, like, in terms of, like, the reaction to it. People loved it. But these people, like, the devs know the bits they didn't like.
From what I've heard, I don't think that they expected people to play XCOM as much as people did.
Right, yeah.
And I think that
like, the complaint we're talking about satellites is, like, that you don't worry about that until your third playthrough, probably.
I didn't even clock any of that until I played it, like, 6 times.
Exactly.
I remember, like, going onto my Xbox and having, like, loading up, like, Iron Man Save 23 or whatever, because I just restarted so many times because I wanted to crack it. So, and eventually I did, but
this is what I want to try and do with XCOM 2 to see if I can replicate what happened with Unknown. But like with Enemy Unknown, I only ever tried to play classic Iron Man, and I'd never played an XCOM game before, and I failed something like it probably went into approaching double digits.
Yeah,
and I loved it. That's why I'm such a fan today.
I am ready for that now as well. It's what's lovely about getting to preview a little bit is it means that I'm now I probably can't keep that save file, so I'm ready now for classic Iron Man. Like I feel like I have a basic enough understanding of the game, but it's amazing all the stuff they've added to like really pander to people who want to do that to make it different. Like, and something really simple, it's just really, really clever, is the fact that one of the loot types you get, or one of the mission rewards you get, is something called an Elerium core. And I didn't clock this for quite a while, but the way those work is it means you get this sort of separate base building, which you have to build as part of the story. And you can just then go, oh, do you want to research experimental ammo or experimental grenades? And you get other things you can spend them on, like kind of better upgrades for other things, but they're more like known. It'd be like you research this, you'll get a better medikit or whatever.
Right.
But with these two constants of kind of experimental ammo and experimental grenades, it's like lucky dip. It's like you spend it, it takes like 10 days to make it, and then you get one of the game's variations of ammo or grenades, and they're all like roughly as good as each other, but it'll change the way you play. So if the first grenade you get is a poison grenade, like that's really cool, but then if the first ammo you get is like incendiary, then you're like, well, I realise with incendiary ammo it's like you put that on the sniper and then he gets his free shot with a pistol. It only does 2 damage.
Lucky hands or something like that.
Yeah, like you get all these like quick shooting pistol stuff. It doesn't do much damage, but it sets everyone on fire, which is like, that's amazing. And so all of these elements that add this randomization, it feels like they've really gone to town on making sure that you can replay it, which is something they didn't think about.
Like the reason people dig roguelike so much is because there's often some kind of item progression or ability progression in most of these games, and it's often a little bit random. And so if you get like incendiary ammo early on, it like you then try and build a play style around that.
Yeah.
And, like it takes a little bit of that choice out of your hands, but means that every campaign will have a very distinct feel to it, hopefully.
There is, and I think there's a lot more scope for like being quite inventive with your group build out as well. Like, I mean, I've already been thinking like, hang on a minute, if I get 4 assaults who can all go back into like concealment, then it's like,
oh shit,
could I just have like proper stealth missions?
Fucking hell, you could. And like, for certain mission types. See, I've been thinking about this way too much, but it's just. I was just kind of never picked that one because I think, like, literally the other choice I think is something
it's just more
like,
damage with swords, which is great.
And I was like, well, that does sound sexy and cool, but like more damage with swords, that's gonna see me through this. That's what I need. Like, that's my bread and butter. Actually, no shit, I should have gone for the cool one because that sounds so much fun.
There's a lot of fun stuff going on there. But I mean, actually, one of the things about the game which I like the most in terms of it solves a problem in the first game is the way that hacking works. Is the fact that you've got this skill hacking which some types of soldiers are better at, and they have like kind of little remote flying robots that can go and hack things. And it has this nice element of being like, when you say hacking a door open, it'll be like, well, do you want to hack the door open? Or do you want to hack the door open with one of these bonus things?
Sure.
And it'll be like, you choose a bonus thing, and then it means that your chance of succeeding in the basic task you're doing is diminished. But if you do it, then you get this cool bonus. And usually it offers you 2 things. One that's like, it's quite an easy bonus to get, and one that's like, that's quite hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of the bonuses are big changes to the strategic layer of the game. So it'll be things like push back a dark event by 2 weeks. It's like, that's huge. Like, yeah, or like,
or like some of them, they're both like tactical and strategic, depending on.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it will like give all of your team squad sight for 2 turns.
One of them was like, you'll be immune from damage for the next 2 turns. Something, it was like a really high
stuff.
Like, that's like completely changes how you play.
Real game changer stuff. But I just love the fact that you've got things like that where you can actually, like, one of them I saw was like increase the funding of this area by 25 supplies like permanently. So it means you can actually like, but the problem is if you fail it, then it'll be like, it'll hurt your character and stun them. And so you have
I think there are different
different punishments as well. But it's the fact that you have this option to be like, do you want to risk making your life right now here in this fight much worse for a punt at getting something for the strategic layer which is really going to help you? And I think that's the kind of interesting choice which was completely lacking from the first game. And even the fact you have some missions where it's like a supply grab where you're going to get crates of stuff, and if you like, when you're on the map you can see where the supplies are. They're like physical objects on the map and they're like clearly marked, and it means that like if you're shooting an enemy who's like line of sight is like past that and you miss and you hit the crate, then it's like you've just lost some of your money. So the fact that it actually has that kind of direct connection of having you to be asking you to be really careful. And even with like basic stuff like the fact that going guns wild with explosions isn't as bad as it used to be. It used to destroy the corpses, which was a pain, whereas now it will destroy the loot if they had any. So it means every time you kill enemies with a grenade, you're rolling a dice.
I love that it tells you if that's happened. Though.
Yeah,
I know. It's such a dick move. They didn't need to do that.
Oh, you destroyed that loot. It's like, fuck you! I didn't know there was any loot in that guy. It's super clever. And even like as you were saying with that kind of forcing you to move and forcing you to maneuver. I talked about
that. Sounds. I like some people listen to this maybe thinking, oh god, that actually sounds like that's not. I don't I don't like the timing missions in XCOM. Like that's I don't like the game pushing me around and making me rush.
Yeah, it's an
into
entirely
mistakes.
different design, though.
But weirdly, like it feels so necessary now. It feels like because once you know how the game works, and this is like a playthrough free of XCOM Enemy Unknown. You start to play every mission the same way. You move in Overwatch as a little group all the way around. You trigger the first pod.
Yeah.
You deal with that. You do the next one, and like it becomes a formula. And sure, things can go wrong still, but like you know exactly what you're doing. It having to react on the fly and having to like just be a little bit more certain in
It's
yourself.
just routine, isn't it? That's the problem. And I talked about this in the video I made of it just being like every mission in Enemy Unknown felt strangely linear, of like you just push forward slowly and then you find the enemy and you kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But it also meant that like you always spent, and this was one of the things that was great about the game, you always spent the start of each mission of feeling a bit increasingly tense as you try and find the enemy, and then when you find the enemy it's almost a relief.
Yeah.
And it was always the start of every mission that felt like whereas in this, like, you're a bit more breezy at the start of the mission. You've got vision. You can see where things are. Sure, if you like,
Oh mate, I've been dashing on turn one occasionally. I don't give a shit.
you
Fuck
just
it.
dash. You think, well, that's safe. I can see it. Run over there, and it means that
I don't even do it as two movements sometimes. I just like, fuck it.
Same.
I don't give a shit.
Run over there, and it means like you have this thing of like having a bit more free and easy. And the only time you really start to think about exact positioning is when you're either in a fight or just about to kick one off.
Sure.
And that's what it should be like. You shouldn't, because the problem is you start to realise that to be good at the original XCOM, you had to be like going through this methodical approach of being super careful, despite the fact there was nothing happening.
Yeah.
And I know that was kind of thematically nice from a military side of things, if that's how they probably would behave. But in this, it's so much cooler being free and easy. And the fact that you are rewarded for, not just in like loot and goodies, but like when you pull off an amazing like pincer attack flank, when you manage to actually get an attack from three sides at once and just decimate them, it's like,
it feels amazing.
it feels incredible.
Yeah.
And
it's not. There's an added pleasure in the fact that this isn't you yet reacting to something that's gone wrong. Like that point of the game is like one of the only moments where you get to go, right, I planned this and I'm gonna do it, and it works, and fucking hell, that was ace. Like in Enemy Unknown, you discover that first group and then you react to wherever they've moved often.
Yeah.
Like this is the ambush moment in that concealment stage is you being able to go, right, I'm just going to put you there and just you here, and then, oh crap, now we're attacking from two sides.
And that's what's lovely about the
does it.
assault not being out of concealment, is because the enemies run into cover based on who they know about. And then it means he's just like, oh, I'm over here though. Didn't think about that, did you? I'm just behind you. No, it's very good. But it does engender in you a different sort of play style, because once you kind of realise the benefits of doing things that actually in XCOM were the sorts of things that when I did the kind of Let's Play series last year, I had people like climbing up the walls with frustration of like splitting up your team into two groups. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing is like, what are you doing? Like, but in this, that's viable. Yeah. Like, you can do that. You can try and flank, try and get a pincer movement. And sometimes it takes it out of your hands. Like one of the enemies, I think it's already been like shown loads of trailers and stuff, the Viper, Snake. Yeah. One of the things it does is just physically pulls your soldier from a long way away to right next to it and starts choking it. And then it means it's like, well, you can't hang back and you need to get in there to get them out.
I love being scared of units as well again. Like the sectoid is pretty much there from... it's not the tutorial mission, but it's in the second mission, I think.
And you're dealing with mind control straight away. Yeah. I'm like, what?
So I think the way that ability works, the one they use most of the time, I think, is an ability you can unlock for... Have you seen the 5th class? I don't know if we even should talk about this, because that might be a spoiler.
I haven't seen it, though, no. So I think it's like Psy stuff.
I think it's a similar ability that you can get access to yourself. It's basically a dice roll, I think, between whether or not... If it lands successfully, it will either disorient... panic or mind control the enemy, and so that's what the sectoid is doing. But yeah, like encountering an enemy on like the second mission that can mind control you, and also
it's the first thing a sectoid did to me. I just sat there going, what the fuck?
And if you've come from the previous game, like the sectoids were the lowest of the low. Like you like by the end of the game, although they, you get some special units, a normal sectoid is like, fucking hell, come on, this is easy.
I mean, it's got to be said that like the whole new tone they've gone for, I'm really happy. I remember saying a few years ago, I really hope they don't just try and phone it in or do like Terror from the Deep or whatever. Yeah. The fact they've actually gone, okay, well, we can do original XCOM, now let's make it our own a bit. They've got this sort of like human hybrid sort of world. They've got the sectoid being revamped to make like half human, and it's got a much more sinister tone.
Yeah.
But it's not po-faced. It's just, it kind of makes you realise that the original game was just a bit pantomime, which was fine. But what they've gone for here is like, it is a bit scary. Like this whole thing of Avatar, of like, instead of having the reverse of having it being like one by one losing council members permanently, in this, you have the Avatar project, which is just the aliens working on something fucking insidious. You've got no idea what it is.
Like, neither of us we don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. But all I know is it's bad.
I think it's game over if it happens.
Oh yeah,
well.
it is. That's the thing, is that's the game over counter, clearly.
Yeah.
But it means like, it'll be like, oh, we found an alien base. And you'll be like, well, you have to get rid of that alien base. And then the counter will like go down a bit. But if you leave it, the counter will go up more quickly. And I think that's how they've stopped people from doing the whole kind of satellite scumming of just building satellites and getting them out there. Because you can build new radio and build more contacts.
But you don't want to fucking see some of this stuff.
But like, if you build all these contacts and just quickly go around to try and get money, then if it suddenly goes, oh, well, there's actually an alien base in Indonesia or something, you're like, well, I'm nowhere near that. I've spent all of my resources going to America.
Yeah.
And then, like, to actually, it's quite a slow process to build new contacts. So you have to wait, you have to react, you have to be like, they go, oh, they've got an alien base in South America. Then you go, oh, okay, well, we need to reach out to North America and then reach out to South America and then attack the base. It forces you to be more reactive rather than like, in a weird way, like the tactical game of XCOM, the original, was purely reactive. It was just like you went in, you saw what you got dealt, and you dealt with it. Whereas the strategic game was just playing an optimal game, and then in between dealing with these tactical problems, which would get increasingly harder as you try to kind of ride the wave. Whereas now it's like you can't do that. I think from what little I know, it's like if you just try and like optimize it and make the best base and ignore that, it's not going to work. Because the thing is, while you're sitting there doing your optimal base building, this Avatar counter is going up and up, and the aliens are fucking taking over the world. It's like you can't ignore. And that's the interesting thing, is in the original game, like, you'd find an alien base and then it'd be like you have to work up your courage to go and deal with that.
You didn't have to.
Whereas now, like, it's much more encouraged because they're not as hard. It's like
the final mission.
You find something, you fucking get it.
Enemy Unknown, you could wait. You could wait it out and like
it was so easy.
You could grind a little bit if you wanted to. And yeah, it feels like that doesn't happen anymore.
No,
I'm still wary of the strategic stuff like we talked about before, and I think it will take me a while to really get a good feel for whether or not I'm into it or not. But I already think I prefer it to.
It's not.
The last game.
It's clearly better than the first game.
Yeah.
It's just it's not as neat, and I think it's one of those things where it's not bad. It took me a longer time to get my head around it, and I realise now that it's serviceable. It does the job. It's pretty decent, but it's one of those things where, in contrast to the rest of the game, which is so damn neat and so damn clever, you just think it's not quite as good.
Yeah.
But
there's the tactical stuff from what I've played so far has just been incredible.
And it's something I should have said way earlier in the podcast, but the thing that's really blowing my mind about XCOM that I think maybe you won't notice unless you're kind of a bit of a series nutter is the fact that it manages to use roughly the same systems and to create something that aesthetically looks like quite similar to the original game.
Yeah, it looks like
but it's really different. Like it's like using the same system to make a very different game. It's like, in my mind, it's like, you have an FPS and you have like Battlefield and Call of Duty. They're really different, but they're the same. It feels like that to me. It feels like the way you approach the game. I'm using the same setup of being like, move and shoot. Or move
sure, it's still 2 turns. There's still
it plays so differently. It's like the one thing I was expecting from XCOM 2 was more of the same, and I would have been happy with that. What I've got is something that's entirely different, and that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah,
it's actually weirdly, I think it doesn't even like override the first game in a way, which is kind of wonderful. It feels like such a strangely different experience from all the slight changes that it just feels like something new, something different, like, which is what a sequel should be, rather than being like, oh, we don't play the other one before because now we've got the sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just so impressed with their team. The things that they've addressed are just speak volumes about how much they understood what people thought of their game.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, maybe in 3 months' time from now, we'll be like, oh god, this is really overpowered and really easy. But right now, it's wonderful to have that sensation of being lost. And as you were saying earlier, like, not only have you got all these things you can do on the overmap in terms of being like, go here and get these resources or these resources or these resources or these, but you even have like multiple main objectives. It isn't just do this. It's like capture one of these guys, go here and do this, beat this mission.
So much going on.
And you start to go, wow, I can't do all of these.
Yeah, that's the overwhelming.
And I think it is the funny thing about the kind of strategic stuff being a bit more obtuse is that you don't know what's going on, but you always vaguely know what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that's the interesting thing is you kind of go, I don't know what's going on, but I know I need to build one of these. And I haven't built one of those because I built one of these instead. And you're just sitting there going, oh, shit. It's always like, because it really makes you choose. And it's like, you don't want to build that because you want to do this.
I love that. And I already feel guilty about the choices I'm making because I'm like, all right, we've just had an important story cutscene and I get where you want me to go next. And it reminded me of the moment in Enemy Unknown where it's like, right, we fucking need to capture a live alien. You need to build an Arc Thrower right now. All right? No messing around. Go build an Arc Thrower.
And like, you're like, no,
I'll do that, but can I just research like the alien weapons first? Just like, can I just get a handle of how this is working? Because I think there might be like a scope or something that I can build. And I'll come back to you about that.
And that's
I'm already doing
that's why I love that so much of the upgraded stuff, like the upgraded, like the interesting ammo and the interesting grenades and the upgrades of all the stuff, is use this Illyrium core like
that you need for
monetary, which you get from missions. It means it doesn't even touch your research.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right, okay, yeah.
So it means you're never taken away from your core research. And like I think in the first game there was loads of stuff that they probably just realised players didn't touch because it's like, well, yeah, but why would I ever research that when I could be researching like this?
Yeah, I still feel like the stuff I'm building, I already get that like that just small feeling that I'm being selfish, which is a weird thing to think about. But I'm like, I'm not really thinking about like what the characters are worrying about right now. I just want to build some cool shit and see what happens.
Well, also it's difficult because on a tactical side, like if you make a mistake, then you go fuck, and you have to deal with that right now. But you forget about it quickly because it's gone. Whereas I found on the strategy layer, I made mistakes which I was just like having to stare at for quite a while.
Yeah.
Like even simple things like I didn't really understand the way that the system worked with radio towers and communicating with new areas, and then suddenly I was like, oh, you've hit your communication cap, and I was like, have I? Because I need to make contact with that area where there's an important mission, and I can't do the important mission until I've made contact. And then it's like, I need to build a radio facility. Oh, God, this is going to take about a month. Yeah. And it's just this thing of like sitting there with this imperative mission hanging over
and
me.
This little like Doom countdown.
Doom counter going up, and you're like, all right, I'll get there soon. I do, but the thing is, I can't, and it's a problem because the preview build ends after roughly 15, 16 hours. I don't know how exactly the criteria for ending work, but I don't know, maybe it is kind of giving you enough breathing room to kind of fudge it and to kind of do things wrong and just pull it back, because it does seem like the counter gets high, but then you do a really good story mission and it goes down again, and then you attack a base and you win and it goes down again. You're like, and it's like slowed down. You think, I'm pulling it back.
Yeah, maybe.
But I like it that it was kind of like in the original game, the fail criteria was well, there were a couple of them, but it was fairly strict. It was like, you lose a country, it's gone. Mm-hmm. You lose a certain amount, the game's over. Yep. You can't get them back. Whereas in this, it's like the counter goes up and it goes up more quickly if there's stuff happening. But if you suddenly get your shit together and you get your good gear and you go on these missions and you kick some ass, then suddenly like you knock it down and you slow it down. And it's like you can... I think it never stops going up from what I can tell, but you can pull it back.
It's just so refreshing not to know. To know that. Like,
that's exactly
you're making the choices based on... it feels realer because you're making decisions based on the information that you're being given, not the information that you know from the past playthrough.
Yeah.
And like eventually, like of course that won't last forever, and eventually, but the first time you play this, you get to not like you see an alien appear for the first time, and you don't know what its abilities are. Like you don't know what it looks intimidating. It's massive. I need to stop that from coming near me. That's all you've got to work with, and I love that.
And that's why in the video the video I made is mainly just me talking like this, because I didn't want to show anything much or talk about much, because there's so many wonderful little surprises and so many things that to trick you of being like, we know that you know about last game, so we're going to make you think it's the same, but it's not the same, and throw little spanners in.
Like even the units that come back have different shit going on. Like we talked about the Sectoid. Everyone knows about the Sectoid. They're tall now, and they got some weird fucking like psionic abilities that are going to mess you up. Like it's just nice to be able to the game, even when it's like, you recognise this, don't you? Not quite, though.
No, you don't.
Because it's been like 20 years and things are different now.
It's a super accomplished piece of work. And it's funny, it's rare that I play, get the opportunity to play preview code like this, which is so fleshed out and so solid. I mean, bugs and glitches aside. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, I've played...
It shows confidence as well. Like, I don't do that much preview stuff, but when a developer is willing to send out 15 hours worth of their game like a month before it comes out, they're feeling pretty good about it.
Well, it's like, I don't know what the mid game's like. I don't know what the end game's like. But I've played this game for 20 hours. And that's more time than I've played a lot of games that I've reviewed. It's one of these things where it's like, I am now like super confident to just say that XCOM 2 is a fabulous game. And it's like, it would have to like set fire to my grandma and piss on her or something to change that. It's just
I'm so freaking happy as well. Like I said,
yeah, I know, right?
I came into this one trying to keep my expectations low, but couldn't. Like I needed it to be like live up to what I experienced with the first game and its expansion. And
it's very strong, and there's so many surprises to be had. I actually was trying to trigger one of them because I know that in the first game, one of the ways you could lose was if your base got attacked, right?
Yeah.
And if you lost that mission, which was hard, then that was it, game over. One of the dark events is you're getting hunted by a UFO because you're in a flying base. I don't know what that means.
Oh,
I know what that means. It means you see this UFO flying around on a map, and it says just have to be careful of your flight paths. And I think it basically means that if there's a UFO in your area, then you need to basically just like stay low.
Do you think it trigger? Does it destroy you, or does it trigger a base mission?
Well,
you don't know, I guess.
I had a bit where like it was clearly it turned a different color and it was moving around. It was scanning, and I was like, "Oh God, it knows where I am." And then I left, and it didn't come after me. But then it suddenly did, and it was like, "It's found you." And then it was like I clicked a button to evasive maneuvers, and then the thing just started flying around the map randomly. And then I was like. And then it suddenly
This is really scary.
And I was like, oh God. And then obviously it rolled some dice and said, oh yeah, it worked. You got away. And I was just like, God, what would have happened if I didn't?
Oh, no.
I think it triggers I think it's the same thing. It triggers a really tough mission.
Yeah.
But it becomes this thing of like, if you choose to allow that dark event to go through, being like, okay, yeah, like the UFO can hunt me. Then if you want to, you can just spend a good chunk of the next month staying at home, gathering intel, or staying at your base and just not leaving.
The UFO's a weird one. Like I imagine like triggering it must be a certain way into the game, I think, because it like thematically for them to have an alien ship chasing another ship in like that suggests that they know that looks bad because the whole like premise of XCOM 2 is that
indoctrination, right?
And like the Advent are controlling the human race and everything, but the idea that there are aliens behind every single action that they're doing, I get the sense the aliens are still sort of in the background, right? Like they signed a peace treaty and then it was kind of that was that. I love the sense that like they're like, fuck it, these people are causing us issues now. Let's send a UFO after them and just fucking get rid of them. We'll put out a press release. It'll be fine. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, even the fact there's a lot of cool stuff. It's like one of the things actually I was quite surprised is despite the fact that they put all this effort into replay value, they've also put in like a story-driven cutscene thing, which I actually quite like. Yeah. It's like.
I'm a bit wary of where it will end up because I know what you mean. Okay, because because with Enemy Unknown that I never cared about the story. It was a very simple premise. Aliens are coming. You need to protect the Earth, and that's all I needed. Because then the interesting stories were the bits that you made with your soldiers in the missions themselves. I don't want it to take too much of that away, Like I don't want it to shift the focus.
But I like that when you've got these multiple objectives to do all these different things, it's a fun thing of like you don't really know where it's leading in a way because you start to realise that every time you complete one of these objectives, you get a little cutscene with some more information, and you just think, what's going on? Like, what is this? Like, because I like the fact the aliens have taken over the world, but they clearly aren't done. They want something, and it's like, what do they want? I don't know. I'm kind of enticed by
That's a simple question, but that's a question that can fuel the entire game. I think that's all we need. Like that in the back of your mind. Like, what is this all leading up to? Why did they even bother? Like, that's enough. Like, I just don't want them to go take too much away from your own journey. Like, that sounds wanky, but like I think that's a big part of XCOM.
I think it is as well, and I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of thing I'm hoping that when you've completed it once it's easy to skip through, but I think that's sort of thing that also the mod community could do a really good job of like maybe just
once again, so the tutorial mission, the first mission of the game is quite story driven. You'll want to play it through it the first time.
Yeah.
After that, as in the past game, you can skip.
Yeah,
so I imagine that will happen.
Yeah, it's quite cool. It's quite cool. At first, when it was like there's a main character you were driving, I was like, I don't want to control a character. Yeah, they kind of did that in one of the DLCs with was it Zhao Lang or something like that. I was like, I don't like this because he's just like he's always there, and every time you've got him, but he's gone. Like the guy you have in the tutorial this time, who's like a face character, he's only there for that, and then he's never a soldier because you want fresh soldiers.
Yeah,
right?
I don't like the game thinking it can introduce its own super soldiers into my game because the super soldiers are the ones that I made. All right,
Yeah.
it's got nothing to do with you, XCOM. This is all me.
They just have Chris Pratt's name written on their neck. They are mine. Okay, we're going to do some quick fire questions because I know loads of people want to know things about this game. So I put the bat signal out. Bloodhawk5 asks, does the Avenger get outer defences or just room defences? Does that mean it could be boarded? Yeah, as we say, I think there's a thing where like you can get shot down by a UFO and then have to do a mission which is on your ship.
I know.
I tried to trigger it and it didn't work.
I imagine it will happen just because it was popular and within. I think they'll have looked at that and gone, shit, that's just a cool thing for us to do.
I think it's the same thing.
But we haven't seen it
It's
yet.
like, it's the same thing if it can happen. Because I've read about it, they're saying, oh, that can happen. You can get your ship attacked and it's a really hard mission if you fail it.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they said that in an interview. So yeah, that's a thing that can happen. Again, I was trying to trigger it because I was like, I want to see how hard it is.
Yeah.
Jeff Prune says, does it add depth without making it impenetrable to new players? Which
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about XCOM 2 for a new player.
I can't really think about that. It's difficult.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we've just been raving about are in comparison to a game we'd already played.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the tutorial does a good job of introducing you to how the game. I don't think the tactical game to start with is that complex. Like,
if anything, I wonder if maybe having played too much XCOM, you just end up getting trapped in your own old habits, which aren't that useful anymore.
Sure. And like the basic rules, like the fact that every character has two actions, like you're not having to think about like in the old games you had turn units, which was quite a horrible thing to get your mind around. Like the basic rules are pretty simple, but there is a layer of like complexity in which you can, like, once you've played the game a lot, you can start showing off. I think it'll be fine for a new player. I think the tutorial does a fine enough job of showing you how everything works.
I think so as well.
The strategic stuff, once again, might be a bit intimidating, but I think we're finding that a little bit.
And something I didn't mention earlier, but one of the things I think is interesting is kind of a moment where at first I didn't get that. In fact, they've made it so enemy, so your unit's health when you get armor, because you just research armor and then you can just have as much of that armor as you want, which is a nice touch. Not having to be like, who's wearing this jacket? Oh, it's him. But it means like your soldier's health scales up to quite a high number, like quite quickly. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because you start off with, I don't remember, but it feels like it does anyway. Maybe it doesn't. But I thought that was odd, but then I realised it's because you fight more things at once.
Yep.
You're forced to move around more frequently and more, like, strangely, and it means you get flanked more often. But because you've got this combination of more enemies and more flanking, it means that it feels to me that you have less that was bullshit moments. You have less moments where a guy's hiding from miles away and then an alien takes a pot shot from miles away and headshots them and gets a crit and then they suddenly instantly die. To me, it felt like when you got flanked and you got shot, you got messed up and you thought, yeah, I deserve that.
Yeah.
But then it would be like that guy's in hospital for a month. But then what would happen is you get shot again from that flank by a second enemy and you die. And it felt like it feels like you can still have that thing of enemies getting lucky, but it felt like that whole system of enemies getting lucky just needed to be there in the original because it knew you were going to be pushing up slowly and carefully, and it needed to embed that sense of risk. Whereas now it's either forcibly or by encouraging you with rewards, getting you to move around the map in a more fluid way. It means that when you do get shot and really badly hurt or shot and killed,
It's because you fucked up.
it's because you've messed up. It's because you've taken a risk which hasn't panned out. But it feels like it's more of a war of attrition rather than one-shotting in this. It feels more like somebody gets shot and then you go, oh God, I should really keep them out of fights completely from that point. And then you don't.
Yeah.
And they get killed. And I don't know, I've had less moments where people have died and I felt like that was bullshit.
Yeah.
Which is...
So I've only played 5 hours, but I've yet to have a soldier die. Which
Really?
is fucking, I almost left someone behind. There was
What
one,
different were you playing on? Baby Brat?
It was, I think it was
You
on
hacked the UI console to make Baby Brat difficult.
it was on, like, I was playing on the equivalent of normal without Iron Man or anything.
Right.
I think there was even an Iron Man option on the preview build, didn't
You know, I think they've made it so you have to play your first game without. Because when I started again, it was like, do you want to play Iron Man? I was like,
that
which
might be
is good.
that
'cause
may, yeah.
I think if you're a veteran, even if you're a veteran, if you jump in, I was actually like, oh, where's Iron Man? But you don't want to play Iron Man your first game because there's so much new stuff to take in, you'll just get wiped out like really quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's okay for new players. As I say, I find some of the new strategic layer stuff a bit obtuse, but then frankly, I reckon in the first game it was probably obtuse as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Think about how we must have felt the first time we encountered
It's really hard to remember, isn't it?
That must have been weird.
Comparing a game you're playing for the first time with a game that you've played like 15 times is almost impossible, really. But hey, Rasench, or Rebel Spirit, asks, is there an option for a more long war idea in the game, or will we have to mod it again later down the line? There's lots of long war influence here.
They've been pretty open about that, But, so I think they will. You will need to mod it in again. I haven't seen any of the kind of second wave options they used to call them. I haven't seen any of that stuff yet. One thing I will say about that though is that the guys that made XCOM Long War have literally last week just launched their new studio. I don't think they're going to be working on a Long War mod. I'm actually hoping to speak to the lead guy on it this weekend and try and figure out whether or not they will. Someone else will likely
not.
Pick up
They're great guys, but they've got all this modding support that I don't know. I don't know if it'll need the Long War. Who knows?
Actually, because that in many ways, Long War was having to budget a little bit, to fit in within a game that hadn't had mod support.
Well, it was trying to add things that should have been there, and now you've got this. Now you actually got one of the great things they've added is there's a variety of ammo and variety of grenades, basically tactical variety of being able to have a bit more interesting control over your characters. They've added that now, and also they've added a game where I don't know, I played it for 15 hours and didn't feel like I was even halfway through the game. It's it feels meatier, and I think a lot of the stuff, even the fact that now they've made it so characters, the differences in the Long War is characters are more plentiful, but also you need to they get ill for a long time. They get injured for a long time, and you have to have multiple teams, which I think in Long War was a cool idea, but it did end up just being very much a war of attrition. Whereas in this, they've made it so that soldiers don't die as frequently, but they do get shot up and then they're out of action for about a month. So
I remember in the interview I had with one of the guys there, they're out long, injuries at default, so you haven't built any buildings or have anyone working on stuff to try and decrease that. Injuries by default last longer than they did in the original.
And it means that you've got that element of having to have more people. And it's great because because you're the Resistance, you have less rookies. You have less access to just soldiers, which means that you have to be careful. If you're just bleeding away soldiers as decoys, which you can do, it does work, you have to be really careful because otherwise it means you just start to... I had a point where it's I didn't have any rookies. It was oh God, it wasn't even just a case of being I can't send my best men on this mission. It's if I have another mission coming up now, I just don't have enough men to send. I'd send 3 instead of 4. It's this is a fucking disaster.
And if what you're asking is, will there be an option to play a longer game? If it's literally that, there will be the modding community are going to be thinking about how successful Long War was, and that kind of stuff is what I'm expecting really early on.
I can't wait to see what the modders do with this. Really,
I think that'll be there. But it's gonna be cool.
Gareth Academy says, "What are your favourite anecdotes from your playthroughs? Any particularly glorious moments you've had?"
Mine was I mentioned it briefly. It wasn't an individual soldier that did something really cool, but I did a hostage mission, which was the first hostage mission I did, and I hadn't quite realised that once you rescue the hostage, that timer still means you've then got to get to the pickup point. And so I had 2 turns after I'd picked up the hostage to get there, and my soldiers weren't in the right place. I killed all the aliens, but reinforcements are coming in right next to the pickup, and I couldn't engage them. I had to dash everyone straight and get every single move that I did had to be the closest they could get to the pickup point. And then on my last turn, they all survived, and everyone got there, including the one soldier that I didn't think would make it. It was wasn't a rookie. It was someone that I'd put some time into. Dashed with this was all my other soldiers gone. I didn't know whether or not it would work. I dashed into the pickup point. Literally, I could just squeeze in on a corner, and it lets you choose the action to get picked up, which is a physical action you have to press even after you've dashed. And I didn't know if that was going to work, and I was really worried that I was about to lose a soldier because of a mistake.
Yeah, I use that all the time.
And you can. So I literally ran past all these aliens like blasters going over my head, and just managed to, in my mind, jump and grab a rope and fly off into the distance.
Yeah, I've had a lot of really nice moments. It's hard to kind of really choose one, just because I think because I've been save scumming, it's kind of had a lot less impact in a way, because I've had characters die lots and just gone, nope, that's not happening today. But I've had some lovely little moments. I think my favourite is just being able to, you can hack these, there are enemy turrets and you can hack them, and then and then they just shoot at the enemies.
So that's a really cool example. The hacking, you mentioned that there's a safe way of doing it, like you'll achieve whatever that is. You like open the door, hack the turret.
Do you want to deactivate it or do you want to control it?
Yes, so that's it. Yeah. The easy one, like the 70% chance or whatever it will be, is deactivate, and then the really difficult one, the one you really got to take a gamble on, is if you manage that turret's going to be yours for the rest of.
But then
the
you
match.
get like hackers that you've leveled up and stuff, and you've made them better at it, and it's like, it means I've got my one guy, and he was an amazing hacker, and it's like everyone else rubbish, but him, like. He can hack stuff. And it was still a tough one. It was like a 55% chance of working, which in XCOM terms is not good. But I did it, and it was this one of the things, an extraction mission again. And it was this thing of like, it hacked this turret, which then all the enemies were trying to kill the turret, and it was armoured. Yeah. And it just meant that everyone else could just lag it while all these horrible snake men were just firing guns ineffectively at that. Or like trying to poison it. And I was like, you stupid snake man. It's like, again, it's like technically probably bad AI, but I didn't care because it was fantastic watching them. And I made the mistake of trying to fire poison grenades at snakes, and I was like, oh, it's not doing that. And I was like, oh, yeah, you fucking. It's like, I'm an idiot. Colin Hughes asks, have they fixed the janky combat cinematics? No, but I don't care. Yeah. This is also any chance of a new Sponge Squad, so Kit Kat, Chunky, and Go Veg. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do another Sponge Squad series. Not for a little while though. Like, it's one of the things where I think a lot of people enjoyed my little playthrough series because of the familiarity of the game, and I think that I need to be familiar with the game. You guys do as well, so it's something I definitely will do in the future, but it might not be for a while because I really want to like just get my teeth into it and have fun with it. Really, otherwise it'd be an extremely short series, I think. on Iron Man. Neil and the Bolts asks, can we expect the same level of hopeless fond attachment to our troops this time? I still feel bad for those I lost in Enemy Unknown. I actually feel more attachment for these guys. I don't want to change their names because I think the way that they're crafted automatically means I don't know, I give them
they have little bios and everything. I did end up changing them. So one thing I do like, by the way, if you do multiple playthroughs, they've added an option to the main menu where you can create characters.
You can add names to the mix.
And a bio and what they look like. And then every time you create a new game, they will be in your roster. And you used to have to fudge this by going into a .ini file and writing names in there, but it wouldn't like do any of the visual stuff, and also it wouldn't always get the gender right. So like it was a really weird like way of getting around it. But I ended up doing it because I played it quite a few times and I wanted the same names. And this was it's nice to see that like literally from the main menu. I did end up renaming everyone and doing their customization.
I don't know. I was going to, but I found myself really surprised at how attached I got to these characters. I was like, well, that's an achievement because in the original you didn't. Like in the original, like you had a soldier, you liked them, but then it meant you kind of, once they were a good soldier, you then gave them a name, gave them a nickname, and gave them like a cool hairstyle, and you were like, yeah, you're cool now. Like I've decided now you're cool.
But the variation. In like between characters is a lot greater now, and I think I completely see why you would want to, and it's nice that they've got their own little bios that you can read that how the story fits into the world.
I didn't know that.
I think I saw one, like my sniper originally before I changed her into Ross Kemp was like had been captured by the Advent but managed to escape, and she's never told anyone why.
You're as bad as the aliens, mate. Turning women into Ross Kemp.
Oh God! Oh no! The worst experiment.
You're as bad as them. Jesus, get out of my house. But no, I know what you mean. But it's weird how I've grown into characters I didn't even like. There's a really brief few shots of him in the video I put up because it's actually a pretty gameplay video like. Because I thought, well, fuck it. Some people are like, this video is just you talking to camera. But I'm like, well, if you want to watch the video of the game, just there's loads of it online. Just go on. But I had this guy who looked like a bit like Egon from Ghostbusters. He just looked like a doofus, and he's a sniper, and he was crap. And I was like, oh, you look like a dickhead. And then there's this guy with like an awful goatee, like kind of American South style, like, or American like
nice
frat boy style, straight flat down.
Love it.
It's like a Fred Durst, really. Anyway, I was like, you look like a dick, and he still never saw any action. But what was lovely is that my ace sniper got killed, and I was like, oh damn. That's and then cool. I had to take this guy, and I had to take this kind of. This doofus Egon guy with specs and a crap hairstyle in. And then, he had a really good first mission. He got some good kills and he got promoted. And then suddenly it became this thing of like, I don't know, like I just started to see him in a different way. And I'm not going to say that I love this man. Right? I'm not going to say that I've fallen in love with this man. But the process with which I grew attached to him was similar
Don't say
to falling in love with someone.
Oh God!
And the fact that you sort of have this person, you go, oh, I don't really, you know, you're not very attracted to them, but then you spend more time with them, and suddenly his naked arms holding a sniper rifle suddenly look more muscular, and I'm like, no, he's not like Egon. He's like a badass Egon. And I start like just seeing him in a different light until eventually it's like, no, he's cool. And I haven't changed anything about him visually.
Yeah.
He's exactly the same looking character. And yet now the way I look at that character is totally different to the way I looked at him when I first saw him.
One of the reasons you probably wouldn't end up doing that in Enemy Unknown was that there just wasn't enough variation. Like the soldiers wouldn't look different enough. And Enemy Within brought in like new bits and pieces, but from what I remember, like by default they don't come wearing specs. Like you'd have to put that, you like the little props and the hats and like the different armor or whatever. You have to customize yourself. Like whereas in XCOM 2 they all come looking a little bit different.
And you get to choose as well when you get the rookies. You get to see what they look like, and it's like sometimes like you get to see their faces.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Shit.
And they're all the same, so you just go, I like that guy. He looks cool. Bye.
Nice.
Bye. 10 resources or whatever. Next up, we got a question from Alex. I think it's Alex Scott saying, are there still interceptors? If so, have they done anything to make them more interesting? They've killed them, which is the right thing to do because they were boring. They were kind of throwback to the original game, which haven't really.
Yeah, another thing that I didn't realise I didn't like that much. I know I don't miss it. Same as Satellites.
Don't miss it at all. It's just a lot more fun, like having just going to places. I got a question from a lovely young reader, Quentin Smith. Who asks, my biggest problem with XCOM was months of plain sailing followed by crippling campaign-ending difficulty. You guys feel the same? Any sign they've fixed it?
I haven't played enough.
I haven't played enough. The game ends before I'm able to see that. To be honest, I didn't find that to be a problem because I found that was just me. When Quinn says months of plain sailing, what in the XCOM, what he means is months of radio silence, and I quite like that in the original XCOM that you had months of going, hey, everything's fine, everything's fine. There's no new missions. I'm getting all this research done, but I knew that when when the days were spinning by and nothing was happening, it's like. That's because you didn't have enough, if you're listening, Quinns, that's because you didn't have enough satellite coverage. So there was stuff happening and you didn't know about it.
It sounds like that can happen again in a way, like with the alien bases, if you mentioned.
But I think what's good about this is in the first one you had to capture people to find out about what the aliens were doing. It was like you were always in the dark. Whereas in this one, it's a bit obtuse and a bit confusing sometimes, but you're always quite well... informed in terms of what you need to be doing. So you might not always understand the best way to do it, but you always know what you have to do. It always says, well, look, this thing's going up and there's a base here. So sometimes you'll sit there going, so I think the difference is it does get worse, but you always know why it's getting worse. It's like, I don't think it's, but I haven't, also it's difficult to know what the difficulties curves are.
You know what,
like.
That's actually a really, to be fair, a really good reason why I'm glad the interceptors aren't there, because that was one thing that has put me out before, where the difficulty spike for the interceptors, which are this like tiny little mini game that you do every so often to take down a UFO. To start with, you can use your default loadout, and maybe it takes you a couple of interceptors to take down a UFO, sure. But then towards the end of the game, you need to have really sunk some resources into that. And if you hadn't realised that's the way the game was going, you can get caught out and it can really
they just get shot down and then you're like screwed.
And that can feel unfair if you don't feel like the game had conveyed that might happen. Whereas so that's actually something I'm kind of glad to see the
I'm definitely glad it's gone. No, it does let you know. It lets you know what's happening, and so I don't know what about the campaign difficulty. As far as I can tell, it seems that as you go on, like enemy types that are harder get introduced, or enemies get more health, and just new skills and new guns. But so far, it seemed relatively well balanced. But it's, as I say, it's one of these things that's really difficult to see until you've played the full thing. Some Tough Beans says, what's your least favourite new aliens and why? I think I'm going to skip that one for now just because I don't want to go into too much detail to that stuff.
How cool is it that sectoids are tall?
Yeah, I think it's cool that the sectoids are actually frightening now. Yeah. And as I said, I like the Vipers because of the fact that they are interesting. They fit really well into the gameplay of actually like pulling your characters really long distances and forcing you to be more aggressive.
Okay, I'm going to say I think the sectoid is my favourite because I used to look at them with disdain. Originally. Like I used to think look at this small, crappy looking alien. I remember I introduced Aoife to XCOM. Aoife's someone
They
I
were cowards, weren't they?
And she was like, "That doesn't look frightening. Like, why would I care about that?" And that's sort of how the game wants you to think.
Yeah.
And like in a real like long term sense, by the time you get to XCOM 2, it's like, I used to think these things were like nothing, didn't you? Look how tall it is, and look what it can do with its brain.
Yeah,
and I really like that it's flipped that on me.
They have become things actually that whenever sectoids appear now, I kill them immediately. Like,
noticed,
it used to be that I'd just be like a sectoid, fine, but now it's like I need to kill that guy straight away because otherwise it's going to wreak havoc.
There's a really nice little throwback. I think it's actually mentioned when you research them or something. But when you kill a sectoid and they drop to the floor, they actually they curl up and they look small again. They look sort of like how you.
Oh really? I thought it was random
game.
ragdoll physics because I've had a sectoid which is trying to straddle a car.
Oh yeah, well okay, when they're near cover, who fucking knows? But if they drop down, their body sort of curls up and it's like almost like fetal or something, and it reminds you of the small sectoid again. And I don't know.
That's cute.
I think it's a really. I just love that this enemy that I used to think was daft is now scary, and that's
I like the way that when they're inside or when it's dark, you can see that their chest and their head are glowing on the inside.
Oh, cool.
But when they're outside in the day, you can't see that because it's only a very gentle light.
Oh, I didn't know so.
Tiny visual detail. I've got to say, actually, I haven't mentioned it, but the visual fidelity in XCOM 2 is absolutely off the hook.
Pigeons are still fucked though. Honestly, right? The pigeons in Enemy Unknown. If you look at them really closely, which I think you need to have long war to do this. God, I'm a nerd. And you zoom in, which you're allowed to do. Pigeons don't move around properly, and I don't think they do in this game either.
Wow.
It's fucked.
Do not buy this game.
Too. It's rubbish.
Do not buy this game. The pigeons do not move around properly.
I can't believe I said that. I've lessened myself.
I've totally. You had to go at me for talking about the soup settings on my microwave a couple of episodes ago.
I did.
And now you bring out this pigeon shit.
You know what I got for Christmas? My main gift.
A microwave.
A fucking microwave. When did that happen?
That's karma.
I want I don't know, like a video game or something.
That is household appliance karma.
It's bullshit. Is what it is.
Man. Well,
I mean, adult.
I'll finally say that,
he said after doing how long we've been talking about a video game.
An hour and a half, one game. And that's nothing really. We could have talked about this for a lot longer. We may well talk about it again in the future when it's actually out. And we've no doubt been playing it loads more. But I'll finally say, as I was going to say, it is a beautiful game. The art design of it is fantastic. It does all of this amazing sci-fi, futuristic, angular stuff. And I mean, that is now such an overdone thing within video games that it's amazing that I find myself actually zooming in and looking at the concept cars and looking at the buildings and going, oh man, looking at the enemy designs and going, oh, this is really cool. Like, they've created a really amazing, beautiful, futuristic world that's really sinister and really wonderful. And it's a game which is just improving on the original XCOM. And if you haven't played the original XCOM, then I've no idea how you've listened for this long. But if you haven't, well done. And go and play the original XCOM. You've got about a month. Get into it. Thank you so much for coming and joining me, Chris. I literally wouldn't actually have anyone else in the world here for this. I'm not even joking.
I asked us twice when it.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm pretty sure, like you said, once the first trailer came out, we did a podcast that was pretty much all about it.
I just need to project the Brat sign onto the clouds and just come and know that I want to talk about XCOM. And thank you very much for listening to Dark Souls again. If you want to come and watch the video I made, it'll cover some of the stuff, but also some other stuff I didn't talk about. You can watch that on coolghost.net. And I'm assuming you're going to do stuff from Eurogamer?
Yep, actually, a couple months ago, I did some stuff that's already online as well. Played the part of this preview build that we've been talking about with one of the developers for an hour. That once again, I think that video, ideally, when like they okayed that we could record with the dev, I think they were like, oh, it'll be like 15-20 minutes, yeah. Whoops.
You just talked to them and interviewed them for an hour.
Yeah, it was great.
Fabulous. Yeah, no, that would probably be a really good watch. Otherwise, yeah, hopefully you guys are as excited as we are now for playing the game in February. I'm usually at this point going, oh, well, I'm not sure, maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be just really, really good. So that's already 2016 off to a stonking start.
Game of the year.
Thank you very much for joining me again, and we'll see you next week for more Dark Souls.
Bye.
Goodbye.